Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. Okay, just a brief weather report. We're finally getting the rain that we need.
Yeah, it's been pretty dry around here. I think we're about 40 to 50% below where we ought to be this time of year for rain.
Yeah, I'm not
All three
surprised. I
of them.
mean, when I saw my lawn looking a little on the brown side, I said, not enough rain.
Yeah, and like the last couple of times it's rained, like I've gone golfing pretty soon after, and the ground's still hard, which means that rain went straight down below, and they need more rain.
Yeah, I mean, a brief shower of 5 minutes or something like that isn't going to do diddly squat. We need kind of a longer soaking rain so that it can really be
Yeah.
absorbed and everything like that. So here for the rain.
Yeah.
All right, lots of news. We haven't been here for a couple of weeks, so we've got a lot to catch up on and everything like that. Do want to acknowledge that today is Flag Day. So
that's right.
This is the adoption of our flag in 1777, I believe, right?
That's right.
So
that's right. This was the day that we decided this was the flag, that this would be the Stars and Stripes, and not like we had the Culpeper Minuteman flag, and there were some other competitors in there, but this design emerged as the champion on this day.
And the last time the flag was changed was 1960, I think, or something like that. So
they added the stars for Alaska and Hawaii, which joined in 59. So yeah.
Yep. So that was it. So we've had stability during our lifetime. Pretty basically.
There's some talk about there's some people out there who want to add some states. I want to dilute Republican strength in Congress, but Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands. There's a proposal to there are proposals out there to have all of them in some form or other become states.
And DC's been pushing for a long time. Yeah. DC statehood, big movement, but
yeah. When I was on the Hill, my boss, Tom Davis, had a bill that would have given the House one vote. Would have given DC one vote in the House, and nothing in the Senate. And in exchange, they were going to the next state up to get a new member to add a member was Utah. So they were going to give Utah a seat and DC a seat, so there's no partisan advantage. And I thought it kind of solved the thing. People came out, oh, it's unconstitutional. It's not unconstitutional. DC has had people in Congress before, back before in the early 1800s. So it could have happened. The Republicans put a poison pill amendment on it to put a bunch of eliminate a bunch of gun laws and so forth, and that's how it got killed. But it was very close to passage. They thought they had they were pretty sure they had the votes at one point.
Yeah, I mean, and even though they don't have a vote, I mean, they do have their shadow, representatives around that. Yeah. They do participate. They don't vote, but they do participate.
Right.
And all.
But I mean, they pay taxes. Some of the highest rates of taxation in the country in DC, and they send soldiers to die in the war. So, I don't know. I thought that was a good compromise. I thought that was a good deal, but apparently, that was a bridge too far.
Yeah, I mean, I would say during the Marion Barry years and some other things that DC showed no ability to really truly govern themselves.
Right, and they don't really now. Right, it's pretty inept now. Congress is now getting back involved in micromanaging DC politics because it's just become so inept. Right, just basically there's no justice system, and it's sort of all by the seat of your pants. One day to the other. Figurehead mayor doesn't really know what she's doing. So they've had to get back involved in a way that the Republicans they're aware when they do this, like it doesn't really sit well with the country. It's not an issue that wins the Republicans a lot of votes, and it's always Republicans. The Democrats, they really don't care what happens to DC.
Right.
Then it degenerates into complete slum. That's fine by them. But so it's always going to be Republicans who push for reform, and they have there's the braking mechanism is there's nothing you can sell your constituents. They don't really care, right? So somebody's got to stand in that gap though, and you're starting to see it happen. Homeland Oversight Committee, which has one of the few things the Oversight Committee has actual jurisdiction over is DC, and so that's what they're doing.
All right. Well, we will move on to the thing that dominates the airwaves, newspapers, whatever, and that is former President Donald Trump indicted yet again. He's got Georgia coming up too, and the problem. I wouldn't be surprised if they follow along, and there'll be another round of this. But this is for 37 counts. This has to do with the document handling or mishandling, however you want to phrase it. The papers that wound up in Mar-a-Lago, some that apparently had classified markings and things like this. This has become quite the firestorm here for Democrats and Republicans in the media. You want to lay some of these things out?
Well, so there's a few things to go there. For one thing, Trump is he's almost seems to be enjoying it, right? It's boosting him in the polls. He's being charged with something that would not have been a criminal matter to anyone else, right? They didn't let the thing about it is like I saw on Twitter today someone said Trump declined. If people tell you why wasn't Hillary prosecuted for this, then ask him why didn't Trump do that? Because Trump told the DOJ to lay off of this, right? Because Trump took the adult view, which people don't think of that ever happening, but that she lost the election, she was never going to be president, she's still never going to be president, and that was punishment enough, right? You're gone. It cost you your political career. That do we really need to put her in jail over smashing these devices and so forth? Well, it turns out he probably should have, right? Because now the precedent is, he didn't do it to them, but they're doing it to him. So now I think, among the things that you will see out of this is one, the law, the laws under which he's being prosecuted, are about to be called into serious question because, these are, with all the other presidents they have document disputes with, it's, letters and memos and maybe a lawsuit with no monetary damages, just, a court orders you to return whatever document. But they went after him criminally. Just that this is the only guy that this approach was taken to, right? So, people can see that it's its own justice. It's interesting that, you would think that the right, there would be some division, but there's really not on this. Almost everybody who's meaningful on the right is saying, this is a witch hunt. This is a, show me the man, I'll show you the crime situation. And, I don't know. The court of public opinion is not on his side. Now, they have this airtight case and now they're making a big deal about the judge. Oh, no, this is a pro-Trump judge. And, she must recuse immediately. It's like, excuse me. So you want as a anti-Trump judge. And that's not any more fair to Trump than a pro-Trump judge, right? They should be welcoming the judge because if you end up with a guilty verdict out of this, you can't complain that, he had a judge rigged against him, like is the case in New York, right? You can tell that the whole system is just, whatever we can do to get Trump. People have reached the point where they're looking at this stuff and they're like, Trump, they're out to get Trump. Now, whether he did something that justifies it almost doesn't matter anymore, right? Because it's just looked at as a jihad to get Trump. So the other thing is that I think that is coming, and I didn't see it on your list, but maybe it is on your list somewhere, is so they have these, and a lot of people suspect that the timing of this, if this was not a coincidence because Trump, because just as, Trump is in all this trouble all of a sudden, Biden, there's two sets of bribes now. There's records of him taking $3.5 million from China and now $5 million from Ukraine. And there are apparently tapes, two of which have Biden himself on them, 12 or 13 that have his son on them negotiating these deals, right? So that's going to come out. The FBI has this stuff. They don't really have good grounds not to cough it up. They're trying to, I don't know if you saw any of the highlights from the hearing yesterday, but they just basically said, yes, we have it. Yes, it's classified. Yes, it more or less says what you're saying it says, but we're not going to show you. We're not going to give it to you, and we're not going to tell you why. So, who's running the country, the FBI or the government, right? And if it's the government, here's Congress saying, we want this stuff. And if once that stuff comes out, and it will, they can't hold it back for long. Biden is, it's a very short hop to impeachment at that point. Biden, from what I can tell, from what I can see of the evidence that it does actually exist on this, you will probably see Biden impeached within the month.
That's a pretty bold call. We'll have, one of the things that we definitely see is just the politics of how this is played out. Look, I'm going to give, Trump, I'm going to give him some, he deserves some blame for some of this in the sense of, in a lot of ways, it's Donald Trump being Donald Trump. It's like, go ahead, try to do this.
Yeah, make my day.
Yeah, he is. He is like that. He basically has taunted them to do this, whether it's New York or whether it's this or whether it's going to be in Georgia. He's basically saying, go ahead, try, make my day, et cetera, et cetera. And they've gone and they've done that. It is remarkable that despite all of this, that what it does is that you mentioned how he seems to be enjoying this. I think this works to his advantage, at least right now in the short term. It's surely not hurting him. This has got the media in a tizzy because, I think, they were just like, okay, this is it. This is unprecedented. We've got a former president. He's going to have to go to, he's got to be arraigned. He's going to be arrested. He's been indicted on these charges, all of these things. And this has got to sink him. And yet, no, not right now. At this point in time, no, he is still flying high. His opponents are trying to figure out. The Republicans are trying to figure out. It's like, what do we have to do here to get any traction, right? So, several of them seem to be lining up to say, well, we'd consider a pardon should he be convicted, right? Should he be found guilty or whatever, we'd consider pardon if we were the president for this. They're trying to really suss out where's the electorate, where's the support level on the Republican side as to what do they have to do to get some momentum and gain some ground or whatever. Right now, Trump, it's like the guy, nothing, none of this is hurting him at all. And it's driving the other side absolutely nuts.
Right.
Right.
They keep propounding it's an espionage act, man. This is the espionage act. Right. And so this, and you're, and people are just like, how can you still vote for him? It's like, well, we don't believe it. And we now look at it as politically motivated. Right. It may be politically motivated. It may not be. This may be the worst breach of government secrets ever. It looks like it's probably not, but it's almost immaterial, right? Because of the way they've treated Trump since 2015. Who was it? I don't know. Did you see Tucker Carlson's thing that he had about this?
No, I didn't.
His point is, he says that the moment that Trump got in the crosshairs of these people, he would have just been treated as another Republican, like Ron DeSantis. They say all the same, Nazi this and that about Ron DeSantis, right? But he could have been in that box. But he said during the debates in the 2016 campaign that the Bush administration, the W. Bush administration, knew Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction, attacked them anyway, and lied about it, right? The rest of the people said, well, it didn't turn out to be weapons of mass destruction. Trump is the one who connected the dots that they did know and they did lie about it. And so, and that is an offense. Tucker Carlson said that angers both sides, that it unites the uniparty of Washington, of the Democrat and Republican sides, right, against Trump, right? And that's what you have, establishment Washington. You think about like the Lincoln Project, those kind of, those are establishment Republican consultants, right? That are just viciously attack him every day because, you know, he doesn't do the establishment thing. And he said, he called out the establishment, and he's not wrong. The other thing that people miss about Trump, and we've talked about this before, Trump has his own intelligence service. He's not relying on what the government tells him. And that caused a big problem for the CIA and the FBI because Trump could tell when they were lying. And these other presidents kind of had to accept what they said.
Yeah, I mean, the way this has gone, I mean, the constant showing of the pictures of the boxes at Mar-a-Lago. I'm like, okay, we're talking about what, 38 pages, and you're showing these, like, all these boxes. Like, is this really unusual? I mean, maybe he took more stuff than other presidents did when they left office. I don't know, because I don't study that. I don't follow that, that type of thing like this.
Right, because nobody cares.
Right.
And nobody would care now if it wasn't a Democrat way to get after Trump.
Right. And they don't make this big a fuss about, the boxes in Biden's garage with the Corvette and all this. It's locked up, and even though he took documents from well before, I mean, when he wasn't supposed to be taking documents. I mean, he was taking documents he shouldn't have had to begin with. The president has right to take certain documents with him, personal documents.
Pretty much whenever he wants, he can take it. There is documents.
Yeah, he's got, and stuff like that. And whether or not you believe how much latitude Trump really had on some of the stuff, I think, I mean, if he'd been more cooperative, this would have been more of a non-issue. But that's just,
no. See, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's Donnie Ferguson. Some other people were saying this on Twitter yesterday. They're like, they offered them all, just turn in your documents and you'll be fine. Deal. No, they didn't. They didn't offer Trump that, and they would not have let Trump off the hook. If he would have turned it in, then he would have, for one thing, conceded a legal point. Trump's position is not that he didn't steal this stuff; it's that it's his to take. Right. So if you give it back, then you admit that it wasn't yours to take. And if he would have done that, they'd have said, oh, prima facie, you committed a crime, you're going to jail. They would not have let him off. There's no, acting this way and getting mercy from the court. They were going to use this to get him one way or the other.
Well, I do think that, I think that they were counting on Trump being obstructionist because that's the way Trump is on a lot of stuff anyway. So, he fueled the fire. I mean, he played into their hands to a certain extent, but it still works out to his advantage, at least right now. What's interesting about all this too is this, that, he's got the New York case, which Letitia James says will have to be adjourned because of this case. But the judge, she's going to control the schedule. I mean, she doesn't even have to set a trial date, anytime in the really near future. They can go through this process. I mean, she could go through and say, it'll be next spring, it'll be next fall, it'll be post-election, right? Yeah. I mean, she's got a fairly wide latitude on doing this. So, it may not, I mean, this just may hang up there. I'm not really sure, based on what we've seen so far, that, even if there is a trial, say, before, during the election, that it really hurts him that much, unless there's some weird stuff that comes out, because you can, his biggest problem really right now to me is that he's got to find lawyers to take the case.
Right. Criminal lawyers. That's right.
He's got to find lawyers that are willing to go ahead and do that. Once he gets that, and once he gets a legal team in place, then I think, with the Hillary Clinton stuff, with the Joe Biden stuff, all of the slow walking of all this stuff with the Bidens and Hunter Biden and everything like this, I think that he stands on pretty good ground here of like, okay, this has been a witch hunt. This is all political. I haven't really done anything that anybody else, any other president hasn't done in the past. And therefore, but because of who I am and everything like this, they do want to go after me and they do want to get me. I think, I wish that, sometimes I just wish that, once again, Trump's behavior would be a little more presidential. Okay. I struggle with his behavior. The thing is that he can't shut up. Okay. I mean, I don't know how many times I said it. I mean, I guess the judge has ordered him that he can't be talking to his body man. The other guy was
right. Walt Nalta. Yeah.
Yeah. He can't talk to him during this phase and everything like this. But And then there's this thing about E. Jean Carroll. They've convinced this judge that she can now amend her lawsuit because of stuff that Trump has said, I guess, during the town hall that he had on CNN. And, where he says, I don't know who this woman is, and all this other, I never did this, and some other remarks and things like that. So they can go after further damages. To me, that also shows that, this is not really necessarily about facts of anything on legal matters.
Right.
This is about Donald Trump, his
Just
personality,
getting
and
Trump. Yeah.
to get Trump. But I don't know. I mean, I think who it was, the Wall Street Journal, so many other people are saying that, if it's Trump versus Biden, Trump loses. I'm not convinced of that yet.
I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all.
I mean, what you said, some things we'll have to wait and see how much they get fleshed out, whether or not, the FBI and the Department of Justice are actually going to move on anything on the Bidens and stuff like that. But Biden's got, regardless, he's still got his own problems. To try to get through this whole thing. I was thinking the other day, I was thinking, like, and we probably talked about this in the past, just that, what would have happened had Joe Biden had to face a normal campaign in 2020 instead of being able to hide in his garage? What if he had to face the rigors of a president's campaign? What if he actually had to go up against Donald Trump and really answer him on the campaign trail and go out and give those speeches that he didn't really have to give, and he didn't have to face the press? How different would that situation have been?
Right.
You'd
have seen how inept he is, and how he can get like okay for a little while where he can handle the situation, but that would have gone on for hours and hours, and like the drugs or whatever it is would have worn off, and you'd have seen the real Biden, right? And we were deprived of that. We were that's the other thing, is like we were deprived of the information we needed to make the decision on that, right? The 51 guys who come out against the laptop, all the social media agreeing to censor the New York Post story just before the election. We have research that shows that more than enough votes would have changed hands in battleground states if people would have known about that Trump would have won. That right there, hiding that information right there, turned the presidential election. So, now Trump is determined that that's not going to happen again, that he is going to, the information is going to come out if he has to supply it himself. So, people say, oh, you should shut up more. Well, the things he says won't get said unless he says them. Right. So I don't know. There are times when I wish there are people, I read things like, you can go after that person, or you can just let that one go. And I would have let that one go. But, it's a brand. It's a thing, once you go down that road, that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Look, the 76-year-old Joe Biden, or however old it was at the time, was at least marginally better than the 80-year-old Biden of today. Right.
Right. He's not getting sharper. That's for sure.
No, this is the thing that we have got to watch.
Yeah, there's polling. I guess there was a Gallup poll out in the last few days that said he about 2/3 between 62 and 69% of the country, depending on how you slice it, says the age is a problem, that his mental faculties aren't there to be president. That's a big lift. They're going to have to convince. And, we haven't gotten into the campaign mode yet. We're sort of still lining up at the gate, right? But it's just him and Trump running against each other. Then it's like, you're just going to see, Biden stumbling and walking the wrong way and shaking nobody's hand and all that stuff, all the weird stuff, and the big bunny rabbit waving him off from answering any questions. That's what they're going to show. And they're like, 4 more years of this, you think at 82, 83, this guy's going to be functioning for you, and he's not, and you're going to have a guy that's about 4 or 5 years younger, winning an election on that claim.
Yeah. It's just an interesting thing to see, how this is playing out. The Democrats have got to be worried about, Biden. They don't really have anybody else out there. You've got, RFK Jr., I guess, which is, I will say this about Kennedy Jr. at this point in time. I think he's less kooky than he was before.
Yeah, and and now we look at the vax warnings, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it wasn't so crazy.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I thought he was really over the top and nuts on the vax thing, but he's in much better shape for that. I mean, he'll get a tiny bit of traction on that, and all that stuff. But it'll be interesting to see. The Democrats have just, I don't know how they put Biden enough bubble wrap to protect him on this go round, because Trump is still got lots of energy. I mean, the guy's
Yeah,
all over the place. I mean, he did the thing in Bedminster right after all the arraignment stuff, right up in New Jersey. But I mean, he was in over the weekend. He was in North Carolina for their state convention, and then also in Georgia for their state convention. So he's going at this full bore. He's got
yeah.
he's just got an amazing amount of energy, and
And
that
look what he's showing up at, like too, like party events, right? Like he's working the crowd in a way, in a more traditional way, right? Fewer rallies, fewer the big stadium rallies, more of going to the stuff that any guy running for president has to go to or goes to, right? And also like he gets out of that arraignment, goes to a cafe, just chock full of people cheering for him. They sing him happy birthday, then he jumps on a plane, goes to Bedminster, big celebration for him there, right? The American people, I mean, what he's seeing is, the people get that I got framed here.
Yeah, look, I mean, there were tons of people out there in Miami waiting a long line. This is
Yeah.
totally befuddled the media. It's like they're kind of like, but he was indicted. How can you do this? He took these documents, all of this stuff. But it's, I think, the root of this is the politics of it all, and people can see right through that.
People, what people see is that the Democrats allowed politics to overcome fairness, right? That like, and whatever comes out of this documents thing, right? They did something for politics that they didn't have to do, right? They used a justice system we have to all depend on to be fair when we're out of power, right? When it's not on our team, and they broke the mold on that. So that's why I say, like, there's no limiting principle on impeaching Biden now, and it doesn't matter that I mean, depending on the evidence, you may be able to get 2/3 of the Senate to vote to kick him out, right? But once we hear these tapes, it's clear cut Biden did this. They could, but even if they don't, he's dragged through the mud, and there was he's impeached. He's been impeached. He's an impeached president now, which is what they say about Trump. Oh, he's twice impeached. He's this and that. He's twice arrested. He's been done more times than he's been elected. Ha ha ha. Right? You're making our point, right? That you are going around chasing this guy around for the sake of chasing him around, right? You're making our case when you say all that. I don't think they understand that.
So let me ask you this. I mean, so we saw Chris Christie on a CNN town hall. So CNN has been putting up the Republican candidates,
Right. Good for them. That's good.
Yeah,
That's good.
it is good for them, and it seems that that Christie is, his thing now is that he's just going to be the guy that's going to pound away and slam Trump, loser, 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 and all of these things. Is anybody really going to listen to Chris Christie at this stage?
Well, an important demographic will listen to Chris Christie, and that is New York area press, right? They've always just adored him, and so they're like, Chris Christie said it. It's not just that it was said; it was that the great Chris Christie actually mouthed these words. And it's like we're south of the Jersey line. We're not really impressed with Chris Christie. We just never have been.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was fine. I mean, I think he did a credible job when he was the governor of New Jersey. I mean, you're fighting, a lot of entrenched Democrat politics in New Jersey and things like that. And
Right.
so there were some positives there and stuff like that. And he's always been kind of a tough talker anyway, but I think his time has passed. It's kind of like Asa Hutchinson running.
Yeah. What are you doing, Asa?
Yeah, what are you doing? It's like, are we going to bring back Bobby Jindal and Scott Walker too? Are they going to come in here?
Yeah.
I mean, it's time to move on. I mean,
Right.
I'll be curious to see, to listen to Nikki Haley or to listen to Tim Scott and things like that. I think actually Nikki she actually had a fundraiser here in Maryland on Monday. I don't know how many people actually went to that, but so they're out there trying. It's still very early. They've got to get through. Iowa will kind of start shaking things up a little bit and getting a measure of who's really going to be able to last.
Yeah, but we're 7 months from Iowa.
Yeah,
and think about that. That's forever.
It does seem like forever. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we've got the summer. I've got other things to worry about rather than thinking about who's the nominee right now at this point in time. And there'll be a lot more. There'll be a lot more things to happen along the way. But I don't know whether or not any other Republicans are thinking. I mean, the North Dakota governor Doug Burgum. Yeah. I'd had no idea who the guy was. The one thing I saw about him is that he was a co-founder of this thing called Great Plains Software. Okay. And I know what Great Plains Software is. We use that at AIM. I was running Great Plains Software to do the accounting, to do the books at AIM, and they sold it off to Microsoft for a bundle of money at the time. So he did well financially, and it was a pretty good piece of software for its time. It was. So it was I was like, okay, well, I will admire the guy for having the smarts to put together a package like that. But really, I mean, it's like, I think Asa Hutchinson has got more name recognition than Doug Burgum, right? And it's not by a lot.
Right. But I mean, Asa Hutchinson served in Congress, and he has a brother that's involved. So like a few more people know who he is.
Right.
But and he's run before for president. He squashed like a bug before. So I don't blame the guy for taking a shot though, because this is one where you could catch lightning in a bottle, because what if Trump does go to jail? What if we has found he was selling these secrets to our worst enemies or whatever? I mean, if you could separate Trump from even a big block of his voters, it's a different scene then.
Yeah, or maybe even Burgum's just got his sights on. It's like I'm kind of thinking that that Trump will be the nominee, and if he wins, maybe I can do enough for the time I'll be on the campaign trail to say, hey, look at me, notice me, look what I did in North Dakota.
Yeah,
give me a
land
job.
management,
Secretary
of Interior.
Yeah, I mean,
stuff out there. Yeah.
We had that terrible crash, on I-95, that big explosion, the truck, and part of I-95 collapsed in Philly, and it's going to take them months to fix that, and that's a huge mess.
Right. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna tell you something. There's two things about that. One is, did you see the thing on Twitter of it's got the like downed bridge part, and somebody superimposed the picture of Chris Christie on the beach. Remember when the beach was closed and he's back in his rocker? It's like, the other thing is that's going to be a real test of government competence for the Democrats in Pennsylvania, because remember when they had the hurricane in Florida and there was a bridge, I guess Sanibel Island or one of those, it was cut off from Florida. The bridge was destroyed by the hurricane, and I think DeSantis had a way across the bridge and way across the water in about 2 or 3 days, and had the bridge operational in a week. Right. Now, these guys are, Shapiro's talking about setting up a commission to make sure the money is spent right, and stuff like that. It's like, several months, this and that. It's like, people are going to see. It's like the conservative way of doing stuff is better than the leftist way of doing stuff. It's going to be writ large on that project. That's a big political potential loser for the Governor Shapiro.
Yeah, I mean, there can be some problems there. I mean, a couple things on that is just that one is that seeing Pete Buttigieg there as if he really understands anything about how to fix
what to do, like right? What do we do?
Yeah.
Can I have that little yellow hat again? Like I had the goggles. That was cool. I loved the goggles.
But if the late Mal Klein were still around, he would basically. I know what Mal would tell me or tell us. It's just that he's going to see this as a complete disaster in Pennsylvania, because Mal said for years, he says Pennsylvania roads are under constant construction. PDOT, the unions and everything else, it's all about the money. They're just funneling all this money. You can go almost anywhere on Pennsylvania on a main road, and there's always some construction going on. He says and he's a Pennsylvania, so he lived it for a good part of his life of traveling through Pennsylvania, and there was rarely a place you would go without a construction zone or a barrel or something like that going on there. And I doubt that Mal would see that today, that under Governor Shapiro, and the Democrats now have more control of the state legislature, right? They took up that, they have more control than they did before in recent memory. So it's just like, do you think anything's really going to change in Pennsylvania? No. But they'll get federal dollars for this, and they will get it repaired. But how much money it'll cost and who's going to really get themselves enriched at this, that'll be another question.
Yeah. Right. And I have a friend who worked road crews in Pennsylvania. He told me that, he said, like, you work a week, and then for 2 weeks you basically hang around. The other 2 groups work. You're divided into 3 groups. They give you 3 groups to do the work of one, because for 2 weeks you don't have to do anything. So he said, "What?" I said, "What did you do all day?" I sat on the bank of the river and ate a sandwich.
And until Mal pointed that out to me, I really hadn't thought much about traveling on the Turnpike and other places in Pennsylvania. But I've been to Western Pennsylvania. I've been throughout different parts of Pennsylvania. I was like, doggone it, Mal's right. It's like there, you will hit stretches of road where miles and miles and miles there's just under construction, and you can go back to that same road 6 months to a year later, and it still looks the same.
Yeah, it's tough in their defense. So it's a lot of mountains, and a bunch of steep angles. And when they built the roads, they weren't really well engineered in a lot of Pennsylvania. And it's bad weather. So, I mean, you're putting salt on those roads. You're trying to fill the cracks with the tar and whatnot. It doesn't really work. So it is kind of tough to be them, but it's also, there's very few places in the country you can find more graft and corruption than PennDOT. It's just an awful entity.
Yeah. I mean, if compared to the times I've gone through Western Maryland, having to go through Frostburg and places like that to get to my grandkids, or going through West Virginia. I mean, West Virginia, when we first started traveling to Indiana a few years ago, inevitably we would run into these road projects, basically resurfacing, a lot of things like that. Mm-hmm. But they, at least in West Virginia, I noticed they got those done to the point where it's like I didn't see them as much as I used to. I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't this mammoth project that took forever and ever. And in Western Maryland, I mean, if you're driving through like Cumberland and Frostburg and things like this, those are areas that can be kind of tough. But I never saw the kind of road work being done there as I did in Pennsylvania.
Maryland does a pretty good job on roads.
Yeah, I think there's just you can be a little more efficient and effective. It's just PennDOT, just bad news in PennDOT. Right. I did want to ask you though too, is that going on to staying on Biden a little bit too. So he had this whole big pride thing on the White House lawn. Not only did they hang the pride flag on the White House, but they had the trans activists, for which now they're trying to do damage control because of the topless trans activist, and that Rose Montoya has now been banned from future events. It's like, hey, it's like, did anybody in this administration even think about what you're doing when you invite these people onto the White House lawn?
Right. Did anybody mention to Rose that this is today she kind of needed to keep her shirt on? Right. I mean, they don't do that. I mean, they're defining deviancy down, right? That's what the whole thing is like, accept more deviancy, accept more evil in your life. And that's a big thing going on in American politics right now. It's like, the whole argument over trans, this and that, and the trans agenda and whatnot is basically, it's a morality argument. It's you guys are not following what we recognize as the rules anymore. And, and you can't, people are pushing back. America's pushing back on that kind of stuff. So, I think it's interesting. What's interesting to me about this is the White House saw a need to do the damage control. They didn't just say, "Hey, it's pride. You guys are bigots," which is their usual response to these things. So they must have heard from enough people that you went way beyond the pale here, that they felt the need to step up and take action. And I think that's actually encouraging. I actually think there was another Gallup poll this week that cultural issues, that people are moving to the right on cultural issues, right? That we've gone too far. And it's like we have this conversation. I have this conversation with my daughter all the time. It's like, where does all this stand? And it's like right now it's too far, right? When it comes back, it won't come all the way back to 1950s America, right? We'll be left with we treat gay people better than we did, right? We let them get married and whatnot. Okay. And no one's going to go attack that and change that. Right. But this idea that you get to go stick it in little kids' faces at school, right, to bring everybody into your culture and whatnot, we did push back on that. And that pushback, is on the way to being successful.
Yeah, no, look, on this whole, I mean, the White House, I mean, if they did not respond, that would have been a terrible, terrible thing on their part. It would have really blown up even worse for them. But because for me, it was bad enough that you have these people at the White House lawn anyway. But if you don't say anything to condemn what happened there, I mean, this is the White House lawn. Okay. Yeah. You cannot let that happen. So I'm going to be kind of curious as to, what happens a year from now. Does the administration still do this, or do they basically say to the trans activists, they have some very strict rules? Do they invite the trans activists? Because just because they promise to do something doesn't mean they're actually going to hold to that. I mean, they get, I mean, Montoya played that up for all it was worth, right. To their advantage. And, we see the backlash. I mean, Bud is still hurting on things. Their sales are way down. Modelo, overtook them in sales this past month. But do we need an entire month to talk about this?
Right. Why is who you have sex with anyone else's business? Why is there any public discussion of that? Right. That's just you doing your thing. Right. That doesn't bother me. That doesn't affect me. Why do we discuss it? I mean, I guess there's some academic applications or whatever, but for the most part, why is this rammed down our throat every day? That's the question. That's the thing people want to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, I will say that. All right. So CNN undergoing some further changes. I mean, Chris Licht, who had been brought in there and was shaking up CNN, trying to remake the image of CNN, get them moving away from, say, partisan politics, realizing that they couldn't compete with, Fox or MSNBC, that had been throwing in a lot of different kinds of programming, changing things around. But now he was given the boot. And so now CNN will be under some new direction, leadership, where they go from here. I mean, they're still, during Licht's, I guess he was in for about a little over a year. The ratings, nothing helped, in the ratings at all.
The biggest night of CNN's life under Chris Licht was the night Trump was on.
Right. Exactly.
3 million viewers.
Yeah.
But that was deemed a failure for some reason that I still don't really understand.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had a lot of movement within the CNN with their on-air personalities. They didn't like any of this, right? They didn't like the Trump thing. They didn't like a lot of the changes. I mean, obviously, getting rid of Don Lemon and some other things that were going on along the way.
Shelter.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the bigger question is, can CNN, find another path? Can they find a path to success?
My thing is, I think he had the right idea that it needs to go back to being a news channel, right? And get off commentary and get off hating on Trump and get off hating on anybody, and go out and cover the news, go out and get the stories, because there's a lot of news out there that's not getting covered. And, MSDNC is committed to, left-wing advocacy. I'm not sure what's going on at Fox News. I think they may be looking for a new CEO pretty soon themselves. they're floundering. I guess their 120-month win streak of ratings ended last month. MSNBC passed them because you lose $4 million a night from Tucker Carlson, firing Tucker Carlson, which I'm still not clear on why they did that. That's the thing's going to happen. So you have a far left network and a network that, for all intents and purposes, caters to the right, and you have nobody telling the actual story, right? So, I think that, and that's CNN's DNA. That's where they came from. So, I think that's the right idea, is to get back to being the one who covers the news. But, that's going to take some time. You're probably going to need a story that people care about enough to follow, like we had the hostages, that's Ted Koppel started the Newsnight or whatever show with the hostage crisis. I'm not wishing for anybody to have hostages, but it's got to be a story that compels our interest day in and day out, to where you need the story, not the spin. So, if that were to happen, then that would be an opportunity for them. But right now, I'm not sure that they're even poised to seize that if it did happen.
Yeah, I think that's, they've got to really think long and hard. I mean, they knew who the competition, they know their competition, and they know that they've been flailing against that competition by and large for a number of years now. The early days of CNN, it was more news and less opinion, and so you would get, a lot of times you would actually get kind of both sides of, story. And I think when you look at social media in particular, you see a lot of people who are sick and tired, conservatives who are sick and tired of Fox. They're looking for something else. They're not necessarily gravitating towards Newsmax all the time, because but some of them are. But I think they're looking for something, and CNN has an opportunity to kind of go right there and just say, we're going to be that network that is going to tell you the story, like, and as you said, without the spin, and let you decide, because that's what it really should be about. During the time that, in the early years of accuracy in media, was, people would ask us about things, and a lot of times we would say, look, go ahead and read the stuff from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting when they started in 1986 or thereabouts, and then make a decision. Read our stuff, read their stuff, and then you decide. Okay, if you don't like our opinion, the way we talk about it or how we present this, that's fine. But at least if you read both, if you look at both, pay attention to both sides, you'll be better. It's better off to watch at this point, some of everything than just all of one thing. And that's, and we have become somewhat polarized in that sense of our news watching habits.
Right. And there's, part of it is they're telling you, obviously they're on TV all day. They're telling you something, right? There's some information getting imparted. But what is happening is there's a big block, there's a big wall that doesn't allow you to look at the other side. Right. So, and that is what's got to get broken down. That is what is changed. Well, but he talks so fast that you.
Is that the trick?
Yeah, he's very. That's what it is. It works out really quick, and it's hard to follow. So, I still remember him being like 15 years old, coming to Heritage, and and all the people going, "Well, this guy's really good," and he was like, so tall, and. But he's made it. He's made it. He's done it. He's been pretty successful.
Look, Ben Shapiro has been one of the smartest young conservatives for a long time. I mean, he's done very well. My hat's off to him.
Yeah.
But boy, I cannot listen to him, for more than about 5 minutes, because that voice is driving me crazy. But my wife has the same problem. I mean, her go-to person now is Jordan Peterson, who I had never paid attention to. And it's now my wife has got me listening to Jordan Peterson, because she doesn't necessarily like his voice a whole lot, but she can listen to him much longer than she can listen to Shapiro. Mm-hmm. And Peterson really gets very deep into things. So if I had a recommendation for people to listen to, just to get a world view of things, listen to Jordan Peterson. He's a Canadian who's really had it up to here with the Canadian system.
Right. That's right. And then Jordan Peterson is advanced in his level of frustration right on this. He's like seen the end of the road and he doesn't like it. So, I hear you.
I have to say, he's extremely smart, and he is very thoughtful. I mean, the
Yeah.
things, his knowledge is really incredible. As like, because it's not like you listen to a podcast or watch a show and that you're just going to get the same thing every time. He interviews a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives. He'll delve into politics, he'll delve into religion, and then just some other things. I mean, I think he did a show just about like on dreams and things like that. But he breaks it down. It's like, okay, I never thought I listened to anything talking about dreams like this, but he makes it interesting. He makes it something that you want to listen to. And part of the problem with cable news now is that there's a lot of stuff on there that's just not, you can't listen to or can't watch anymore.
Yeah.
I think I just become too jaded on this after all these years. Now it's like, I don't know how much
even the ones on your side. It's not,
right.
It's like, oh, well, they're just not, they're not giving me my message. No, it's like, it's just not interesting. It's sort of a thing that's, time has passed. Conservative radio was going to dominate our consciousness forever, and that's kind of waning.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, and I'd listen to more conservative radio if Rush was still around, because Rush made it entertaining and whatnot. But in a post-Rush era, I don't know. It's very different now. Yeah. And I for one miss his voice, his humor, and his intellect. And I think he was a tremendous asset to the conservative movement. That where the shoes of no one can fill those shoes. I don't know that anybody ever will be able to fill those shoes. Right. As a result. What about Chuck Todd, turning over the reins to Kristen Welker for Meet the Press? Does that make a big difference?
In the content of the show, probably not. She's sort of just as blind to the same things as he is. She's not interesting to me. She's a leftist hack to me. I don't see any like original thoughts that make me think. Chuck Todd is a really nice guy, but he has got he got into doing a shtick, and he thought it would work. And they're by far the lowest rated of those shows. And right. That's part of what's going on here, is that he's kind of run the show into the ground. But he got down an ideological blind alley, and he couldn't get out of it.
What were your opinion about Tim Russert, late Tim Russert?
I thought he kept it lively, and I thought he challenged people on both sides. He poked at both sides, and and he was obviously more on one than the other, but he made sure that he understood and correctly, fairly, I thought, explained the arguments of each.
Yeah. So is that what Meet the Press is lacking, though? The Tim Russert really kind of set the tone, and
yeah, it's the Meet the Press was unpredictable, right? It might go for you, it might go against you, and now it's another leftist thing, right? It goes into a different box now. It's not important as a standalone thing.
All right. One last thing before we get to our last words here. Karine Jean-Pierre and Hatch Act violation.
She got a little carried away with her mega magas or whatever, and some ethics person pointed it out to them, and they're like, okay, but we don't think we violated it. We won't do it again, but we don't think we did anything wrong. It's like, okay, I don't really know. I read what she said, and it's like, it is, sort of sounding like a campaign event, and, it's a slippage, and I don't think they should shoot her over it or anything, but it does appear like a warning, a slap on the wrist is appropriate.
Yeah. Once again, I don't think Karine Jean-Pierre actually knows what the heck's going on anyway. So,
or what the Hatch Act is.
Yeah.
It's not in that binder somewhere, man.
I mean, she mentions it frequently as a way to not answer questions, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure she understands what the heck it is.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
All right. Last words. Wrap it up, Brian.
Let's see. I'm looking on our things that we didn't do. The golf merger. I don't know who's going to be able to say they were harmed by it. So I don't know who's going to be able to say they have standing. Silvio Berlusconi certainly made it interesting. He was able to involve a whole different kind of person in politics, the loose woman. New York, it says something about the minimum wage for delivery workers went up to $18 an hour.
Yeah. So like, here's the deal is that the people who are on those apps like DoorDash and Uber Eats, the minimum wage apparently for them is $7.09 an hour, right? New York they've now passed a law that it's going to $17.96, and then I think in a year or two it's going to go to $19.96 an hour. But these people get tips and everything like this. Part of the idea here is that it's just like it's a tipped wage, just like we've had that tipped wage for restaurant workers forever in the U.S. Is that you get a base rate and then you make up the rest until you get the employer, if your tips don't cover to the minimum wage, the employer is making up that difference to you, right? And this was the same type of thing with these app workers, these DoorDash workers and Uber Eats, is that you get $7.09 for doing things, but if your average hourly earnings worked out to whatever the minimum wage is in New York, you're fine. But now they're pushing it to this level. Now, to me, once again, it's more anti-business things going on in New York City.
We're going to collect money and pass it out to other people.
And New York's excuse on this is they're saying like, well, these people are waiting around, so they got to be paid for while they're waiting around for the next delivery. But they're inevitably the delivery side of this the costs are going to shoot way up.
Right. And do not be a chump and send any money to Gavin Newsom's 28th Amendment to Stop Guns movement, because for a constitutional amendment, right, you have to have 38 states, right? 38 state legislatures have to approve it. So if you can think of 13 states that won't approve it no matter what, and I can give you 13 right now, then you're wasting money to pursue this, right? But I think that you're not going to move those 13 states, right? You're not Oklahoma, Texas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. They're not going to go for this. So you're wasting your time to pursue it. And let's see, yay for the Denver Nuggets winning their first ever NBA title, and doing it with a big man, doing it with a dominant big man. It's been a long time since pro basketball in the United States centered around a good dominant big man. And, I love post basketball, so I'm happy to see it back.
All right. Thank you everybody for joining us today. One word about the Gulf merger is that this is just another example to me of the Biden administration. They're this antitrust. They're going after everybody. They're scrutinizing every single thing. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so that's that for that. All right, everybody. And anyway, please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers this weekend. Get your due from your wife and your children, your significant others. Okay. And we'll see you again next week.
All righty. Be coming from